Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Shabbat Shalom.
Over the past few weeks, in my house, we've spent a lot of time talking about the importance and the power of words. Most importantly, as we say to our children time and time again, and often again and again. Now remember, use your words kindly. Your words can hurt your friends or they can help your friends, we say. And when my kids do inevitably say unkind things to each other or their friends, as all kids do, we ask them, was that a kind choice? How could you have said that differently next time? And then we ask them to apologize with more than a passing, I'm sorry, not because we're being mean or particular parents, though they may disagree, but because we really want them to understand the impact of their words and the way that they've harmed people that they care about. Because at the end of the day, what I want my children to learn is that their words hold tremendous power, and that being part of being a kind person is wielding those words with kindness, compassion, and respect for the people that they're talking to. Speech, I believe, is the most powerful tool in our toolbox. Now, that's not to say that actions are unimportant, because they certainly are, but actions stem from words. Most every choice is made because of what someone said or what they failed to say. Our words have the power to bless, but they also have the power to curse. The choice is ours. This week's Torah portion, Parshat Balak, speaks precisely to this quandary, the push and pull of blessings and curses, and the wielding of our words for either benevolent or nefarious purposes. This portion is what we like to call a fan favorite. It tells the tale of a prophet for hire, Balaam, and his talking donkey. A talking donkey in the Torah, you might ask. Are you sure? Yes, a talking donkey, which since the early 2000s and the release of Shrek, many of us can only hear in our head as being voiced by Eddie Murphy. In this portion, Balaam is hired by Balak, the king of the Moabites, to curse the Israelite people. Balaam then hops on his trusty donkey and he goes on his way. But suddenly the donkey veers off and makes this sudden turn in the middle of the road. Frustrated, Balaam beats his donkey. And this happens actually 3 times in succession before the donkey finally turns around and says to him, "What's the deal? Why do you keep beating me?" And a rather surprised and almost thunderstruck Balaam says, "Well, you made a fool out of me. You're lucky that I didn't just kill you." But the donkey just looks back and says, "Aren't I the same donkey that you've trusted all of these years? In other words, be careful what you say to me and how you treat me, because not only do I deserve more than that, but I just might see something that you don't." Because it was the donkey who in fact saw what Balaam was blind to. The donkey who saw that there was an angel with a fiery sword in their path, set there to threaten Balaam and stop him from moving forward. And it was the donkey who, in that swerving, actually saved Balaam's life. When Balaam finally arrives at the Israelite camp, the Moabite king asks him to curse the Israelites. He says they're different. They pose a threat to us. They have to be dealt with. But as Balaam constantly reminds him, he has this undefined connection with Adonai, with the God of the Israelites. And he can only say what God permits him to say. 3 times Balaam opens his mouth to curse the Israelite people, and instead 3 blessings end up coming from his lips. Each time a blessing comes, the king tries to reposition Balaam to find maybe a different way or a different sight of the people to utter that curse. But each time his attempts are foiled. And not only does Balaam end up blessing the Israelites, but one of those blessings becomes the poetry that we find in our daily morning liturgy. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotzecha Yisrael. How beautiful are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. We often wonder, what was it that Balaam saw in the tents and the dwelling places of Israel that caused him to offer such a beautiful blessing? Rashi famously taught that Balaam saw the layout of the Israelite camp. He saw how the openings and the closings were perfectly positioned to offer both modesty and privacy where it was needed, and also to showcase openness, warmth, hospitality, and inclusivity in their community where it was needed. Balaam saw a community that had such respect for each other, such care for each other. He saw a community that lived out their values every single day in every way, from the way that they structured their tents in the wilderness to the way that they interacted with each other on the journey. Such a community, it becomes clear, was worthy of blessing. Our words hold the same power as those that Balaam said. In the Psuke de Zimra section of our morning prayers, we say, Baruch Sha'amar v'haya ha'olam baruch hu. Blessed is the one who spoke, and the world came into being. Our tradition teaches that words are so powerful that it was actually through words that God created the world. Berezin, Genesis says, let there be light, God said, and there was light. And as I think about where we are today, in the world that we live in right now, where words and speech are everywhere, in the 24-hour news cycle, in social media, in catchphrases of interviews, in text messages and emails, and everywhere in between, I wonder, how are we collectively wielding this power of speech? How are we using words? Are we using them to model our values and to create and nurture the kind of communities that we want to live in? Are we using our words to bless each other? Or are we using our words to be divisive and contentious, to create animosity and tension between people and communities? In short, are we using our words to bless or to curse? I've been grappling with these questions in so many ways the last few weeks, wondering what we owe to each other and to our communities, wondering how we can teach our children to do better than what they're seeing on this global level, where words of hatred and vitriol seem to own the day. I'm wondering how we teach and preach in community and communicate within our communities and our families and amongst ourselves that can harness the power of words for good and for blessing. And I've also been grappling with these questions on a very specific level for myself and my clergy community in this week in particular. This week we learned that the IRS has ruled that a decades-old ban has been overturned, and that congregational clergy may now endorse or oppose candidates or political parties from the pulpit without negative impact on a congregation's nonprofit status. For the last many, many years, clergy have spoken from the Bema about the ways that Judaism can and should frame our conversations about the laws and practices in the world we live in. But we speak from our expertise and from the lens of Jewish law and Jewish text on a particular issue, not to endorse specific candidates or political parties. In a world that's increasingly bifurcated and where we're pushed to identify something as right and therefore the other as inherently wrong, with no room for nuance, to me this ruling is worrisome, to put it mildly. To endorse specific candidates or parties from our congregation would be very likely alienating and divisive amongst our sacred community. And I'm not alone in that feeling. The Central Conference of American Rabbis shared a letter from our board president, Rabbi David Lyon, echoing these sentiments and urging us to maintain a practice of speaking to issues rather than candidates. But it is concerning because words do have tremendous power. And when we speak from our bema, our goal is to teach, to empower, sometimes to challenge, and to create meaningful opportunities for growth, understanding, and connection, to use our words to bless our sacred community. And so as we ponder all of these questions about how we use our words, I turn us back to the question where we started. How can we use our words kindly with each other? How will each of us use our power for good and for blessing today on this Shabbat, in this week, and in every other week? How will we position ourselves so that our tents and our dwelling places are closed and open at the right times and in the right places? How will we use our speech, the weight of which has the power to create worlds for blessing and not for curse? Shabbat Shalom.